As usual, I like to start with last month. So last month we did the Midah number 3 of the 13 attributes of God's mercy, which is Nosei Avon, that God passes over sin. So we talked about not only does He pass over sin, but the verse in Yechezkel teaches us that God Himself comes down and personally cleanses someone who wants to be involved in tshuva, in returning to Hashem. So we talked about how we are taught, whether you want to discuss it from more Kabbalistic views or not, but we're taught that God has created all sorts of systems, and just as we have natural systems, you do something and there's a reaction in correlation to what you've chosen to do. So also in spirituality, there are systems, and in reaction to the choices a person makes, so it goes up and down the spiritual worlds, and there are cause and effects. However, we're taught specifically for tshuva that Hashem does it Himself. That Hashem comes Himself and cleanses the person who wants to do tshuva. So the lesson that we learned from this is that we shouldn't say that if a person messed up, so we'll leave it to them to fix it, right? So you messed up, you did something not right, and if you so choose, you can come and apologize to me, but otherwise I'm going to sit back and go about my life. But rather, we should learn from Hashem that just as Hashem, if a person takes a small step forward towards coming back, Hashem comes down Himself and helps the person. If they open their own heart a little bit, Hashem opens their heart a lot more. So we should do the same with our relationships with people that we interact with. Don't wait for the person necessarily to come to you and to fix everything themselves, but rather help them out. And somehow I always come back to my coffee. It's all about the coffee, the morning coffee, right? And don't talk to me before that gets in my system. And definitely don't be the person who spilled my coffee, right? Only my children can get away with that, and even them, it's a close call, right? So if someone spills my coffee and I have a choice, I have many possible reactions, but I could say, you know what, I'm going to be really nice and I'm not even going to say a word to this guy. I will let it slide. Or I can take a step further and be like Hashem and get up, grab some paper towels and help him clean it up, right? So there's the, okay, you can get mad at the person, you can react and repay a negative thing with doing a negative thing in return. We're not talking about that, right? You can be patient, which was the midah that we learned about 2 months ago, and give them space, or you can go even further than that. You can be the one to take the step forward, right? So when someone makes that awkward comment at the Thanksgiving dinner table, so you can stay quiet and not answer them back, but you know that you're kind of letting them simmer in their embarrassment and uncomfortable, or you can try and jump in and help them cover up for that awkward comment that they made. Or when someone comes and they apologize, and they clearly are trying to make something right. We just love those apologies when someone comes and says, I'm so sorry I did this, but, right? But, you, XYZ, or really it's because of, so it's an imperfect apology, and maybe you have every right to just say, oh, forget it, right? You can't even give a real apology. I'm not talking to you about this. Or you can do as Hashem does. Nosei Avon, the person came forward. They tried in some way at least to show that they want to remain connected. They want to repair the relationship. And you can help them. You can help them with that. You can engage in the conversation. Or the last example, practical example, and I love the practical examples because I feel like it takes the deeper concepts that we learned and makes it very real. Or when you reach out to somebody and you've left them a message and then another message and you've called a bunch of times and they're not answering you, it hurts. It feels bad when someone doesn't get back to you. So the natural, I think, reaction to that would be, okay, now it's on them. If they decide they want to reach out, great, I'm here, and if not, not. Or we can try and push ourselves to be like Hashem, rise a little bit above it, help the person fix what it is that they may be messed up in, right? So I left with a challenge before we, you know what? Let's continue our review, and then we'll get back to the challenge. So we gave an example, a living example of someone who did this. Eva Moses Kor, and we talked about her terrible experiences as a twin who was experimented on by Mengele, and how after her sister passed away, this was many years after the war, I'm rushing through the story, it was a very powerful story. Her sister passed away, and she fell into a terrible depression. That was the last person alive in her family, and there was nobody else left. And so she decided she was going to go and talk to a Nazi, if you recall the story. And she sits down across from a Nazi guard and in front of his home, and he cries about how he lives every day overcome by unbelievable guilt, and he knows he can never fix what he did. And so she had a conversation with him, and for her it was very healing. And it was very powerful to see how this Nazi guard was living his life and how he felt about all that he had done. And so out of gratitude, she wanted to send him a thank you. So what thank you could a survivor send to a Nazi guard?
Poison pie.
So she wrote him a letter. And in the letter she wrote, "I forgive you." And even though she wasn't the person that he had done things wrong to, but she knew that that would be the most powerful gift that she could give. And she set herself a challenge, and she relates in the interview. She doesn't relate whether or not she was successful in the challenge, but she gave herself a challenge to even forgive Mengele himself, right? And unbelievable perspective that a person can have to strive for forgiveness. And we've also talked about how really the person who's hurt the most when we hold a grudge is ourselves. You know, there was somebody I know who told me that he held a grudge for decades. He couldn't let go of something. And when he finally met the person again, they didn't even remember what happened, right? And for so many years, this person was living with anger and resentment and pain. I know another person, a friend of mine in LA, I think I might have related this story last month. He became the employee of a good friend of his. They were friends for many years. Something went wrong in the business. So his friend, as the CEO of the company, needed a scapegoat. And who did he choose? He chose his old friend. So needless to say, that was the end of that working relationship, but it was also the end of the friendship. And so this friend of mine told me how every time he would see this guy walk down the road, his blood would boil. And the betrayal that this person could do something like that to him. And eventually, he forced himself to forgive because he didn't want to live like that anymore. He didn't want to live with that level of anger and resentment and pain. So, again, we're rushing through last month, but thanks to Jared, you can always find all of the classes on the YouTube channel it's the Federation YouTube channel, right?
Playlist just for this.
Playlist just for Tomer Devorah, so you can look it up. We've got the video recordings there if you want to see it more in depth. So we ended with an idea. How does a person tap into forgiveness? How am I able to show up for others in this way? So Rav Tzadok points out a very powerful idea that part of Emunah, and again, this can be a whole class unto itself, but part of faith in Hashem is also faith that you have been given everything you need to succeed and do well in your life situation. So if you truly believe in God and you really have faith in Hashem, you can't say, I can't do this. Because God is clearly telling you, yes, you can. God put you in this situation. God gave you this relationship. God gave you all of your specific strengths and weaknesses. So it's a funny thing because we tend to say that we have faith and we believe in God, but we also tend to say that we know better than Him. Because how often do we say to ourselves or to those around us, I can't deal with this anymore. I can't do this. It's a normal human reaction. But part of emunah, part of faith is knowing that you actually can. You can handle it. So, number one, believing that about yourself will empower you to be able to reconnect with somebody who's done wrong to you. Number two is, we talked about, if you think about how much Hashem forgives, if I think about how much Hashem has forgiven me, how many times I've messed up and He gives me another day, He gives me another chance. If Hashem can do that for me, maybe I can do it a little bit for someone else. So that's a very quick review of the concepts we learned last month. And I left last month the challenge. I don't know if anybody remembered that I left the challenge, which was, if anyone can notice over the course of the month an opportunity that they were given to practice this attribute, this midah of Hashem, to be nosei avon, to bear the inequity, and then over al pesha, which is to then also come down yourself and cleanse the sin, right? So I'll give you guys 30 seconds to think about it, in case you didn't come prepared. And I will tell you a personal example that I had. It was somebody who sent me a text, which I thought was quite rude, and the person got very upset with me and my response, which I thought my response was quite rational and normal, right? But he felt it was very rude. So what happened? He came to me to talk to me about it. And what I was expecting was, I am so sorry. I cannot believe what I was thinking, that I would send you this text, right? Everyone's laughing because they're like, wow, you are naive. And of course, what was the conversation instead? Instead, the conversation was more along the lines of, I can't believe you wrote that back to me. And, what were you even thinking? Did you even realize what that would feel like to me? And on and on and on. And my immediate reaction was like, wow, this guy's clueless. I'm not even talking to you. And then I thought about it a little bit more. And I realized he actually put into the relationship by showing up. He came to me to talk about it and to try and work it out, right? And so yes, he was coming with what he was upset with me about, but it's also a message that he wants to be connected. Even though he's not doing it in a very strategic way, shall we say, but he didn't give up, he didn't ignore me, he didn't let the matter drop, he engaged. So I took it as an opportunity to listen and to hear where he was coming from. It was actually very powerful for me, because once I understood where he was coming from, I actually didn't think his initial message was all that bad, right? So that was my personal opportunity where, even though maybe, if you want to look at it in terms of justice, I would have been perfectly right to turn around and walk away from this guy who sent me a rude text and then followed up by coming to complain to me about what I had messaged him, right? But instead I thought about how much Hashem has, for me, listened to my complaints, given me a second chance after I messed up, believed in me. Hashem clearly believes in this person. So I want to open it up to the room. Did anybody walk away this past month with an example where they had every right maybe to step away from a relationship or retaliate, but instead tried to practice this idea, this lesson?
About that.
Yeah, in fact, I would argue that unless you were at this class, you should assume that the person you're talking to does not think about it in this way. They're not going to show up with this perspective or working on themselves with this attitude, right? It's tough. I remember one of my rabbis said to me once, he said, it's very hard for sensitive people because they live in an unsensitive world, right? It's hard to be a sensitive person because you're surrounded by insensitive people, people who don't think the way you do. It's hard. It's very hard. Okay, let's move on to the midah of this month, which is L'she'eris nachalaso. So, the new midah takes this even a step further. L'she'eris nachalaso means to his closely bound family. That Hashem, the relationship that God has with us, the Jewish people, is that of family. And if you look throughout Tanakh, you look throughout the stories and the discussions in the Bible, we are compared to God as a wife, the nation of Israel. We are compared as children. There's even a place where it seems to imply that we are like God's mother. I'm not going to go into that one. I don't claim to understand it myself. But you see over and over and over throughout the Tanakh that we are referred to as God's family, as Hashem's family. Now, family is a double-edged sword, right? Because everything family does feels incredibly more intense. And also, family feels very comfortable to let down their hair around us. So there is an intensity that comes with family. But there's also a reality to family, which is that the love is unconditional, right? A child who fails is still the child. The value that we have for our children is intrinsic. It's automatic. We don't wait until our children grow up and prove themselves with their accomplishments to love them, right? And even though we might be disappointed by some of their choices, we might be disappointed by maybe some of their failures, but that's the failure and the success is something that is almost external. It's on top of the baseline love and the baseline connection that we have with family, that we have especially with our children. And so this is the way that Hashem interacts with the Jewish people. In fact, it says in multiple verses, in multiple verses in Tanakh, such as in Shoftim 10:16, it says that God's Spirit became exhausted from the travails of the Jewish people. In other words, God feels intimately everything that we experience, everything that we feel. And you can probably imagine already how we're going to lead into current events. But everything that the Jewish people experience, God experiences. I remember once hearing an expression, something along the lines of, we're only as happy as our least happy child. Right? Everyone heard something like that? So any quote-unquote punishment or challenge or trial that God is going to send to the Jewish people, He has to quote-unquote calculate within His own design, do I really want to experience this? Because whatever my children experience, I'm going to feel. That's how it is for Hashem. He's with us intimately and He feels every single thing that we feel. So what does that mean for us as a people? So our sages teach us that our neshamos, our souls, are actually intertwined. There is a concept in Judaism called arvos. Kol Yisrael arevim zeh bazeh. All of the Jewish people are guarantors for each other. That's the literal translation. We're guarantors for each other. We're all connected with each other. Now, Tomer Devorah talks about, from a more Kabbalistic perspective, that every single one of us, the soul that we have, a small part of it is within every single member of the Jewish people. So really, when I look at you and you look at me, I should see, to a certain extent, a reflection of myself. So it can get a little bit tricky when you think about this. It can become an exercise in selfishness, because I'm going to give to all of you, and I'm going to do for all of you because you're really me, right? So that doesn't sound very altruistic. But that's really part of what relationships are about. It's learning to extend my definition of self. There's a famous story about Rabbi Aryeh Levine. He went to the doctor with his wife. So they both walk into the examination room, and the doctor's a little bit confused because there's really supposed to be only one patient, and yet they're both sitting there. So he says, what can I do for you? And Rabbi Levine says, our foot is hurting us. His wife's foot was hurting, But it bothered him so much, he knew that she was in such pain, he dragged her to the doctor, and he couldn't let her go about her day because he wanted to make sure that her foot was taken care of, right? And ultimately, that is the attitude that we're supposed to have for each other. Every single one of us needs to somehow, and this is going to be part of our conversation today, cultivate the attitude that it's our pain and it's our success. And we actually just talked about this on Shabbos in one of the classes. So if somebody does something to me, so maybe I want to take revenge. I want to get back at them. But if you actually have the reality lens on, so it's kind of like I stubbed my toe, and so I'm going to punish myself by smacking my foot, right? My toe is hurting me, so I'm going to punish myself. That's essentially what we say when we look at another person who's hurt us, and we say, well, you did this to me, so I'm going to smack you back. In fact, before we were able to receive the Torah, a prerequisite to receiving the Torah was that we should have unity. It says when the Jewish people arrived at Mount Sinai, Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Ahar, he, singular, the Jewish people encamped at the mountain, as one man with one heart. So there's a lot of conversation and discussion around this. Why is that necessary? In order for me to receive the Torah, why do I have to be unified with the entire Jewish people? So there's a very practical answer to it, which is that nobody on their own can keep the entire Torah. It's impossible. Some of the mitzvahs are only for women. Some of the mitzvahs are only for the Kohanim, for the priests, right? Some of the mitzvahs are only for very unique and specific situations. The only way that we can keep the entire Torah is if we're connected with the nation. So there is a beauty to this. Oh, I skipped this slide. There is a beauty to this, but it's also a responsibility. The beauty of it is that maybe there are mitzvos, there are commandments that I can't keep. But I can assist and I can help somebody who can. Maybe I can give them time, support. Maybe I can give money to a charity. And now it becomes my mitzvah. I'm connected with it. It's mine. But it's also a responsibility. It means that I don't get to walk around and let everybody else make all their mistakes. Because that's my mistake too. That's my fault too. That's my problem as well. So I want to share a few stories about people who live their lives this way, who literally live their lives this way. And then maybe we can also get into a little bit on how we can work on this and how we can strive and achieve to be more like this. So the first story I'll tell you is Rabbi Israel Zalman Meltzer. He was a rabbi who lived in Israel after the Holocaust. And his grandson came to let him know that he just got engaged. So he goes up the stairs to his grandfather's apartment. He knocks on the door. He sits down. His grandfather pulls out, some sort of l'chaim, and they drink together. And now it's time for his grandson to go home. He walks him to the door. He walks halfway down the stairs, then turns around and goes back upstairs. So someone who was watching this asked him, Why didn't you walk him all the way down? This is such an amazing occasion. Your first grandchild is getting engaged. It's unbelievable. So he said, I was halfway down the stairs and I thought to myself, not everybody has this type of opportunity. Not everyone has a family. And even if they have a family, not everybody's children get married. Not everyone's grandchildren get married. So I can't, and at that moment I realized I couldn't experience the full and total joy of this thing for myself, realizing how many others don't have this opportunity. So I turned around and I went back upstairs. In 1970, this was a great scare to the Jewish people. There was a plane that was held hostage, and Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner was one of the hostages. He was the Rosh Yeshiva of Chaim Berlin Yeshiva, which still exists today in New York, small town. You may have heard of it. When he was released, there were thousands that came to greet him, and they had a band playing and music, and Thousands of Jews crowded to the airport when they were finally released. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, one of the contemporary great rabbis of the time, went to the band and told them, stop playing. And they were very surprised. What more joyous occasion could there be? What occasion could be more deserving of music, of live music? And Rabbi Feinstein explained, because not all the hostages have been released yet. We cannot play music while there are still some sitting at home anxiously waiting the release of their loved ones. The last story, though, I think is the most powerful. The last story that I'll share for now. And I find this one to be the most powerful because this is not a story about a great rabbi. This is not a story about anyone who necessarily is better than us in any way. In fact, he was younger than all of us in the room. There was a young yeshiva bachar, a young student, who was learning in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yaakov Bender. And every Thursday night, there was a man who would come to the yeshiva to sell the students flowers. Right? So the married men maybe would buy for their wives, and some of the single men would buy and bring them home. So one Thursday night, this vendor comes with the flowers, and he notices that one of the students walks by, looks at the flowers, and then walks away. Okay, he doesn't make every sale, he can't get them all, right? He comes a second time, does the exact same thing, and then carries on. The third time he comes around, he stops, he buys a bouquet. So the vendor was very confused, and he couldn't hold himself back. He said, what happened? I have the same flowers now that I had the first 2 times that you came, and you didn't buy then. What changed? He said, well, there's a student here who actually lost his mother a number of years ago. And he was standing in the hallway here. And as I was walking by to buy flowers, I thought to myself, I'm going to buy flowers, and he's going to see me buy flowers to bring home to my mother? I couldn't do that. And so I came back a second time, but he was still there. When I came back the third time, he wasn't there anymore, so I bought the bouquet. Right? This is just a quote-unquote normal Jewish teenager. But such unbelievable sensitivity, such love and care and connection to every single Jew, to not be able to carry on with his own life because maybe it's going to affect someone else. So I lied because I said that was the last story that I'm going to say, but I'm going to say another story because I just thought of it as I'm looking at this slide. So think about it like this, okay? When we buy stock, let's say that I have bought stock in Berkshire Hathaway. Let's say, right? A man can dream. So,
In 68.
in 68, yeah. So I have this stock, right? And the company goes down. And what happens? I feel depressed. I feel frustrated. I freak out, right? I'm checking my phone or, my computer. Is it going to go back up? What's going to happen? Should I sell it? Stock goes up. I'm partying. This is amazing. It's fantastic. Do I own the company? I have one stock. And yet, because I have one stock, I'm so emotionally deeply connected with the success of the company. This is us with every single Jew. I have one stock in every other Jew. As we learned, a part of my neshama, a part of my soul, is connected with every single Jew. So I have to be able to think about every Jew in that way. The stock goes up, the stock goes down. It's personal. This story will sound familiar. I think we've said it before, but we're talking about stocks, so I'll say it again. There was a young man who was in a yeshiva high school. His parents gave him incredible opportunity to have a very robust Jewish education. So, of course, he took full advantage of it by ditching class, making trouble, and learning not a word. So his parents, in exasperation, decided they're going to take him out of yeshiva and send him to send him straight to college after 12th grade. And at first, he was overjoyed. Finally, I'm done with all this Hebrew school. I'm done with all this extra learning that's being forced upon me. But after sitting with this information and with this news for a while, he realized that he wanted to give it a real shot. He wanted to give it a try. So he went back to his parents and he said, let me have a chance to study in Israel. Maybe if I learn in Israel, there I'll be able to connect, there I'll be able to really grow. And his parents are like, no way. You blew so many years of yeshiva, we're not spending money to send you to Israel. Aside from the fact that we can't afford it, we wouldn't even if we could. So he went to his rabbi, and his rabbi said, don't worry, I will take care of it. If your parents give permission for you to go, I will make sure that all the funds are taken care of. So he finally convinces his parents. His parents let him go to Israel. He goes to Israel for a year. He's there for 3-4 months. And he gets himself into trouble. Okay? And he wasn't just teaching class. So I'll let your imaginations fill in the blank. But it was bad enough that he knew that the word was going to get back to his rabbi back home. So he figured, you know what? I blew it. This is a disaster. He starts packing his bags. He's like, I'm going to be called back. There's no way the rabbi is going to keep sending funds to pay for my education. And he gets a phone call. And he sees who it is. It's the rabbi calling him. He's like, oh boy, this is not going to be fun. But he picks up. How could he not? This rabbi believed in him. He raised the money for him to be able to go to Israel. He picks up the phone and the rabbi says, listen, kid, when I buy a stock, I don't sell when it drops. You stick it out for 10 years, maybe 20, maybe 30. And that's when you start to see the interest. That's when you start to see the value, and that's when you sell out. Get back to yeshiva. And that stuck with him for the rest of his life. He went back to yeshiva, and every time he fell, every time he made a mistake, every time something didn't go as he had hoped in life, he thought back to that time when that rabbi believed in him. And we have the opportunity to do that. We have the opportunity to do that for all of those around us, to give them one more chance, to believe in them, to show up like family and not to give up on them just because they didn't perform the way that we had hoped. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we do this? This is very, very hard. And even with the little skills that maybe I'll describe right now, it's not going to suddenly become easy. Okay? But let's at least try and talk a little bit practically. How can we even begin to internalize this type of attitude? So, raise your hand if you've ever imagined what you would do with the money when you win the lottery. Right? I mean, for me, it would be just like a $10 million house and a yacht. Otherwise, I'm totally fine. Okay? And a really nice kitchen for my wife. Okay? We've all imagined what I would do, what charities I would give to, what changes in my lifestyle I would make, you know. And even without the lottery, we've dreamt about that brand new kitchen or the dream vacation. We've been given a tremendous tool called imagination. Our mind can take us to incredible places. In fact, in therapy, right, in psychology world, we use imagination and we use the mind to teach people how to get themselves to the place that they want to go. One of the very common human struggles is feeling a sense of value, a sense of self-worth. And we tell ourselves all sorts of stories of what we need to accomplish in order to achieve that feeling of value, of self-worth. So one of the things that we'll do is have the client close their eyes and imagine that they've accomplished all of those things that would make them worthy of love, make them worthy of value. And maybe try this when you get home. Close your eyes for 5-10 minutes. Don't fall asleep, okay? Sit up straight. Try not to fall asleep. And imagine that you've accomplished everything in your life that would make you valuable, that would make you worthy of love. Now here's the crazy thing. You start to feel really good. But you haven't accomplished any of them. All you did was imagine that you've accomplished all of them. That's what our minds can do. So we were given this power of imagination, not for ourselves, but so that we can step into someone else's shoes. so that we can try and imagine what it's like to be them. Try imagine what it's like to live a day in their life. That power of imagination that power of imagination is an incredible tool, and that's step one. That is one piece of how we can get ourselves towards feeling and towards imagining that we are all family. Use your power of imagination to think about what it's like to be in the other person's shoes. And when you do that, you'll start feeling connected with them. You'll start feeling a little part of yourself in them. Number two, and this is something that we can all do. Oh, skip the slide there. And we can literally practice it today, and I hope that we all do if we haven't already, which is that when you hear something, act on it. We hear about things all the time. We hear about people who are struggling with health. We hear about people who are in need financially. It's a small community. We know everybody's business, right? And if you don't know everybody's business, talk to my daughter for 5 minutes and you will have all the business. Okay? There's no secrets. So what do we do about it? If it's a stranger, we do nothing. But there's no such thing as a fellow Jew who's a stranger. Even if I've never met them, I'm invested. I've invested in their company. I want to see that stock go up. It hurts me when the stock goes down. So what do I do? Well, sometimes there are very easy things we can do. Right now, I know many people who are either living in Israel or who have family that are living in Israel and they're worried sick about them. Shoot a text. Pick up the phone and give a 1-minute call. I just wanted to check in. How are you?
I did that with Ari Saturday night, and he texted back, living history, but enjoying it, because he's in Israel.
Take an action. And you know something? Maybe it's a situation where you don't know the person, you really don't feel like you can help in any way, you don't feel that you can call. You can always pray. Right in that moment, just say, please God, help that person. That's doing something. Or even better, hold on to it, or maybe try and take a list whenever you hear about these things. And when you go to synagogue and when you go to shul, pull out that list and pray for all those people. That's taking action. That's doing something. And it's also reminding you that this is my family. The same way that Hashem relates to the entire Jewish people as his family, we as a people must relate to each other as family. That's how we express that midah, that attribute of God of expressing himself as family. So number one, use your imagination. We all have imagination, and we've all practiced using it. And number two, do something. And it doesn't have to be this huge thing. That's, by the way, perfection is the enemy of the good. Right? Trying to fix the whole problem is impossible and overwhelming, and then we just do nothing. Do something really tiny that will take you 20 seconds. Pray in that moment. Send a text, hey, thinking about you. It means the world to people, and it also reminds me that this is my family. I'm invested in this stock. I can't sit back and do nothing. And the more we practice that, the more we will feel it. And when somebody does something that maybe I have every quote-unquote right to disown them, to disconnect, to forget about the relationship, to punish them, but I've instilled a deep lesson within myself that this is my family. So I'm going to treat them like family. We have to remember we are always connected. Always. No matter how far people seem to stray. Think about children. Unfortunately, parents and children who have become separated. They're not on talking terms anymore. But you know what? Whether they like it or not, the children are still always going to be the continuation, the heritage, the reflection of the parents. We're always connected. We're always family. Hashem treats us that way. Hashem loves us that way, and Hashem feels deeply everything that we experience. And for us to arouse and awaken that attribute from Hashem, from God, we have to remember that we as a nation are family. We're invested in the stock. And whether you like it or not, you're stuck with me. All right. Thank you all for joining. Any questions, comments?